We'll move now on to our public hearing, the issuance of bonds or notes in excess of $100,000 in the fire truck. The Guilford Board of Selectmen will be holding our public hearing now concerning a proposed special town meeting warrant article that seeks to authorize a lease finance agreement for the purchase of a new fire truck, currently estimated in the value of $450,000. A draft of the proposed question to be presented to the voters is as follows. Article 1. Shall the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a long-term lease or purchase agreement for an amount not to exceed $450,000 payable over a term of 10 years for a new fire engine to replace the 1987 Range Fire Engine No. 4, provided that no funds are required to be raised or appropriated during the current fiscal year for the first year's payment for that purpose. The estimated lease payments beginning in 2013 will be $52,727 per year. A 3/5 vote is required. I do want to make it perfectly clear that this public hearing that we're about to open is not to discuss the need or not the need for Engine 4. I want to be perfectly clear. This public hearing is just to discuss the financing if the voters vote to pass that. Just want to be clear. The Budget Committee tomorrow will be receiving a presentation by Chief Carrier, and at that point he'll do a presentation, and I'm sure, of course, it will be open to the public, Chief, and the Budget Committee, and I think we saw the chairman of the Budget Committee here tonight, I thought, somewhere. Oh, there you are.
She's just a little short.
And the public will be given ample opportunity, I have no doubt, in that meeting to ask their questions for the need or not the need. It has been well documented, and again, it will be the opportunity. This is not a special hearing to discuss the need, as a reminder. This is just to discuss the financing should that go through. Having said that, I will remind whoever would like to come up and speak, as always, we are Guilford residents, we are neighbors, we care about our community, we love Guilford. So I would ask everyone to be polite, to be professional. This is not to be made personal. If there's any insults whatsoever, I will ask that person to stop, and if we have to, please, we'll interrupt that person. So I'm asking everyone to please remember that this is a special hearing to discuss financing only. Having said that, I'll open it up for public discussion. I will close this. Oh, a gentleman is up. I was that close.
Only seconds away.
My attitude on financing anything for myself, businesses and all, is as long as you do it out of current income, current funds. Borrowing funds only is kicking a can farther down the road, making other people pay more, and just ups the cost of everything. And I think we can probably do this project as it ought to be done without any kind of borrowing. We can stay within $100 grand. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Is there anyone else that would like to discuss the financing on this truck? Mr. Leandro.
No.
I actually got more of a question probably for the chief or Mr. Akeley. This proposal from Saucy. At the bottom it says, it's dated October 20th, 2011. It says proposal shall expire unless accepted within 60 days. Have they, is this still good or?
They're willing to honor it.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Leandro. Yes, sir.
Jay Ellingson from Ridgewood Ave. This is my first time in 38 years coming to a public forum because I'm not very familiar with some of the politics.
I'm concerned as a taxpayer that we have already spoken on this issue. And as you spoke of earlier, it's not whether we should or shouldn't. We've already decided that. We spoke loud and clear. To watch the meeting the other night, what small part I got on TV, I saw discussion of which part of this fine could we get around the judge so we don't have to go through the judge. Not through the vote, not through this, not through that. We've already spoken, the most important person you can't go around. So I'm not sure why we're back here. Maybe that's my ignorance in town politics, but as a taxpayer, I guess I'm questioning why I took a day off, time off from my work to come in and vote if my vote doesn't count. That's all I've got to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on the financing of the truck? Please, sir.
Hi, I'm Phil Cook, Guilford, New Hampshire. Question I have is regarding the total cost. I understand, the interest on the bond payment, but the existing truck also has some residual value. And any discussion or anything in the paper I read does not talk about the residual value of what we have. And I was wondering if anybody has a figure of that.
Chief or Chairman Akeley, would you like to respond to that? Thank you, Mr. Cook, for that question.
The most recent discussion we've had with Sean Mulcahy from Lakes Fire Apparatus was he put the value somewhere around $3,500. And the market is very poor for used fire apparatus.
You can't even drive it. I think the engine was more expensive than the rest of the truck.
Correct.
The engine's worth $8,000, the rest is scrap.
Typically what we would do, we would talk to the vendor about a trade value, and that would be one consideration, and then the other would be to simply auction it off to the highest bidder. So there is the potential there for money to come back to the town.
I hope that answers your question, Mr. Cook. Is there somebody else that has a question that has not been heard of yet?
I'm trying to locate George Hurt, Guilford. Reading through this now, I understand it's for 10 years. So at the end of 10 years, we own it. Is it a close-end lease or open-end lease? It's a close-end lease.
We own it.
Or is it open-end lease?
We own it, whatever, how that defines.
Okay. So at the end of 10 years, as I understand it, we own the truck. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hurt.
It should be more definitive, though. I think, an open-end, close-end. I understand if you own it, obviously it's a close-end. We should perhaps look at that.
Okay.
We would definitely
Thank you.
make sure that is the case.
Thank you, George. Is there anybody that would like to speak on the financing of this truck who has not spoken yet? Sir.
Skip Murphy, Guilford Glen Road. The other gentleman who stood up and talked about the voters having already spoken, I think is a legitimate point. We just voted on this whole idea of obtaining a new engine 2 months ago, and by a resounding defeat, the article was voted down. So, kind of piggybacking on what he said about the last meeting, well, how do we get around this, how do we get around this, how do we get around this? I'm wondering if the select board would be willing to speak with respect to why we are overriding the vote that was taken at the last town election. And,
Mr. Murphy, while your question may be a very valid one, we're here at the special hearing to discuss the financing, and I would be more than happy to answer any question about financing.
well, it does
You
go
can
to
still ask that question at the end of this meeting. We'll have public discussion. That's not to skirt your question or the gentleman's question. This is specifically about the financing of it. If you have a question
Well,
about
it does,
financing,
because it goes to the root cause of why we are even discussing the financing in the first place. I'm not bringing up whether it should be done or not. I'm just asking why, in view of the large vote to say no, are we even discussing the financing? So let me phrase the question that way.
thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there anybody else who has not spoken yet?
No
Who would-
answer? That was a question.
Hearing from the people.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on the financing of the fire truck? Please.
Thank you, Barbara Eichinger, 558 Edgewater Drive. I guess what I would like to know is it possible to have the financing come directly out of the fire department's budget? I mean, you know, I spent some time at the fire department this week. You know, thank you, Mr. Andrews, Lieutenant Andrews. I spent 3 hours looking through the records and touring the department and trying to understand the issue. And I did find, you know, I was surprised basically at the lack of rigor of the record keeping in the private sector. If our processes had that level of rigor and our documentation had that level of rigor, we wouldn't be in business. Okay, so I was a little surprised by that. I would expect a little more rigor to what I found. There were some records missing. You know, the pump test results were a little curious as to why this wasn't flagged earlier. You know, the maintenance of the vehicles, I questioned. But my question on the financing, getting back to that, would be, you know, you're asking, to me it sounds like this is a process issue within the fire department, and the fire department has admitted, I guess, that they might need some better processes in place. So why are you taking it out of the taxpayer's hide? I mean, you know, if the public sector is they've made an error, and now the taxpayer is being asked to pay for it. And so that's really my concern, would be that it's taken out of the fire department's budget and not passed on to the taxpayer. I mean, that's really my issue.
Well, Barbara, just to answer that question, because I believe that I can answer the question, and please, gentlemen, sure, you can answer it for me if I don't get it. Just to clarify, whether it comes out of their budget or it comes through a vote, it's still going to be paid by the taxpayers. So when you say take it out of their budget versus this month, it's still the taxpayers going to pay for it no matter what. I just want to be clear on that.
Oh, I agree with you, okay. But I'm surmising, and maybe I'm incorrect here in my analysis, that this is just going to be tacked on to the current fire department budget, and that budget grows.
They wish they had that budget, $40,000, $50,000 extra. They don't have that in their budget.
Well, I'm talking about the lease payments. Right. The lease payments. So if the lease payments are $50-some thousand a year, you know, you're going to take their budget and you're going to tack on the $53,000. You know, my suggestion, if we need this engine at all, would be it comes out of their budget. It's not tacked on top.
Thank you, Mrs. Secretary.
Crop TV.